Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to another episode of 4Fusion Friday. It's the first Friday of the month here in February. We are back once again. We're visiting 1974 for this episode. Let me introduce the crew. Of course, the creators of this show on the channel, Mr. George Lamie and Mr. Eric Porter. Welcome, guys. And once again, Mr. Chris Fox from Hellman and Nats is back with us again. What's up, Chris? How are you?
I'm well, thank you. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, so we got a fun show for you as always. Like I mentioned, we are visiting or have been visiting. Well, we did it in January, right? Today's early February. We visited 1974 for albums that are 50 years old in 2024. What we decided to do it again here this month on 4Fusion Friday. So George has picked out 4 spectacular albums from 1974 and a cool pick from 1974 as well. And but before we do that, George is going to kind of give us some news on some new things coming out. So George, I will turn the episode over to you, my friend. Here you go.
Yeah, I got a couple of late in the year 23 releases that got by me. First one is J. Rod Sullivan, The Comeback. This is the drummer from the Four Corners solo album. It could definitely be considered like another release from them. It's closely resembles their style, but with a sax man on board. I don't have any credits, so I can't be sure, but to me, it sounds like at least some of the guys from the band. It definitely sounds like the guitar player. But yeah, if you liked Four Corners, you got to dig into this. Digital only, as far as I can tell. But next one, Work Project. The album's called Two. This is a new artist for me. It's a creation of guitarist Adam Nagy. He's from Hungary. He has widely enlisted fellow Hungarian drummer Gergo Borlai for this. It kind of resembles Borlai's band over there, European Mantra. That's not going to help most people, though. So I would say think like Steve Vai, but maybe a little amped up, quirkier, a little heavier, maybe. Just go to the Bandcamp and dig in. The one big beef I have with this is it's the worst case of interluditis I've ever heard. There's 13 of the 24 tracks are under a minute, like noise, jokey throwaways. But, I'm going to adjust because I like the rest of it. And I got thanks to super viewer Mike Klingenberg for cluing me into this one because it had gotten under my radar. It came out in summertime. But that's it on new releases.
Cool.
All right.
So, like Pete said, the Square is going to be riding the coattails of his morning show, albums that are 50 years old, 1974. Before anybody puts in the comments, we left out Return of Forever or Have I Known You Before because we have already featured that record and because I think it would probably win pretty easily. So we decided to go with 4 others. We got alphabetically, you got Arti and Mestieri, Tilt. They're an Italian band. Stanley Clarke, self-titled. Billy Cobham, Total Eclipse. And the 11th House, introducing the 11th House. So, we like to go to our friend Eric Porter to kick these things off in fine fashion. What is your number 4?
Not happy about starting this one. I'm definitely interested to hear what everyone else has to say. We always talk about how difficult this is. My number 1, after a bunch of listens, I felt like my number 1 kind of rose to the top. 2, 3, and 4 are spinning. And I think, Pete, you might have said this on the last show. My 4 today could be my 2 tomorrow and vice versa. But I found except for my number 1, a lot of these, when they're good, they're as good as anything. But it felt like these other 3 all had a few missteps to me and then it was hard to separate because, like I said, the good stuff is really good. I don't want to focus on the negative, but when you get to the good stuff on this, but I'm going to go with the one that I find probably the most proggy, which is Arti and Mestieri as my number 4. This was higher higher a day or two ago. I don't know why. I couldn't, in my head, I kept just like going back and forth. I love the combination here. I'm always big on violin. Love the violin. They got horns going. I think their melodies are very catchy. The opener is fantastic. Really catchy melody. One of the things that gets me with this band is I find the drummer is way too busy. I don't know why, but that really got to me after a while. And I think that might be what put this at 4. A lot of mellotron over the top of these songs, which works really well for the most part. I think my favorite track is probably again, these are in Italian, so Positivo, Negativo. That one, there's vibes, there's guitar, there's violin, really rocks. The missteps for me, the closer is just noise, which is the title track. That's just a throwaway. The second tracks, and I always make fun of the vocals, and it's not so much that the vocals are bad, but I really feel like the vocal killed the momentum on this song. Had a good start, and then the vocal comes in and everything just kind of pulls back. The music pulls back, the vocals kind of this, and kind of what you were talking about, George, at the beginning. A couple really quick transitional interlude tracks, I guess, if you want to look at it that way. Not that they're bad, but I almost would rather have them incorporate those into the song they're proceeding than just kind of. They're little momentum killers too, I think sometimes. They don't, if you like them, there's not enough there. And if you don't like them, they're kind of distracting from the track that's coming. So I'm going to start with Tilt as my number 4.
All right, let's go to Chris. What do you got in the 4 slot?
All right, I'm gonna try the Pretzi, see if it works. It work?
There it goes.
All right. Stanley Clarke. First of all, this was really hard, George. All 4. I mean, this is crazy. I mean,
Yeah,
I listened to them all probably at least 5 times over the past couple of weeks, and this is what my conclusions. Stanley Clarke, he was with Return to Forever at the time this was being made. And I know Chick Corea encouraged everyone in that band to record solo albums. And this is his second solo album. The first one being Return for Children of Forever. I haven't heard that one. So this one, it's a little light for me. It's like it's not a real the songs, like for instance the first tune, Vulcan, there's a Vulcan something.
Princess.
Vulcan Princess.
Vulcan Princess, it's similar to Vulcan Worlds. That's a great tune. The second tune, I think he sings Vulcan Princess.
Yesterday Princess.
Yes, I got that. I don't have it in front of me. I'm sorry. So that, and then there's 2 songs that are riff oriented with a lot of jamming. Lopsy Lou, it's a really, really infectious, cool riff. They just jam over it. And the same thing with the next tune, Power, where they just riff, they jam over it. And Jan Hammer sounds good. Tony Williams is on drums. He sounds great. And Bill Connors is on guitar. Because when he was on Return to Forever's Hymn of the Seventh Galaxy. And then there's a string, there's like a series of a solo acoustic bass track, and then with strings, that's nice. And I think that the last part, the Life Suite, is what I like the most. And it kind of was a show-offy album for Stanley to show all his different styles. That song Power too, there's on YouTube, there's Jeff Beck used to cover that. There's a audio of Jeff Beck and John McLaughlin playing Power on YouTube, which is from like 1975. It's pretty cool. There's a cool riff. It's just a riff though. And they're jamming over riff. The tunes aren't real. They're not really that the tunes don't really hold together for me. Although it's a fun album, it's not a bad album. Stanley's Balembic bass sounds really good. Really well recorded. It's just, you know, I think his solo records got stronger as he moved forward with Journey to Love and School Days. It's just strong. He just got better at it, making records. Um, so that one, you know, since there's just a lot of jamming and it's not super inspired jamming, at least not to me, that's why I chose it for my 4. But it's Stanley. I love Stanley.
Pete, where are you going?
I must have changed this list like 5 times over the last couple of days. Ken Gold is not going to be too happy with me, but I'm going to go with Arti and Mestieri. Tilt is my number 4. And I think if we would have, you know, it's funny because I listened to this album a lot back in like the late 90s and the early 2000s. And then I just kind of really haven't gone back to it in a long, long time. So this was the first time me listening to this in a number of years. And it's one of those albums that I think there's parts of it that are brilliant. And there's parts of it that just seem a little messy to me with my ears in 2024 based on what I thought of it, you know, like 20, 30 years ago. I love Graviton 981. The opener is great. The violin and sax solos are really, really cool. There's a lot of cool mellotron and violin on this whole album. Like Strips is a really cool piece. I agree with Eric. I don't think the vocals are bad because I love like Italian prog vocals. I really do. I think the Italian style of singing is wonderful. These vocals aren't bad. I just don't think they fit on this album. It's like they weren't neat. Like they just like it's like throwaway. You know, it's like, well, let's just sing a couple passages and then we'll go back and do the rest of the stuff we're doing. Just don't think they're needed. Positivo Negativo is probably my favorite track on here. That's absolutely scorching. Scotto Mato is furious. It's just not long enough. Articolazione is got some wild playing on it. It's got mellotron, violin, vibes, all the cool stuff. I think, and again, there's vocals thrown in there too that don't really belong. I think it's a fusion classic, an Italian fusion classic for sure. One thing, but it's not perfect. There's moments that don't really jive with me, but there's other moments I really love. And one thing too, the guitar player in this band is amazing, and they don't use him enough on this album, and that really bugs the crap out of me. It's great to hear all the violin and the vibes and the tron. I love it, but man, every time that guitar player shows his face, he just kills, and then you go like 3 songs where you barely hear him again. So I think it's a really good album. It's definitely a classic on the Italian scene. I just don't think it's as good for me as these other 3 albums. So that's my number 4.
Or Stanley Clarke? I'm going to echo a couple things that Chris said. I think the jamming is a little bit uninspired, particularly Jan Hammer. That when I see Jan Hammer on a record, I get excited, but I don't feel like he's not showing off on here. He's just showing. I mean, he's not showing out. He's just kind of he's on here, but it's not what I had hoped. The main issue is kind of like we've all said, this is a real tight group. And so if something's going to stand out for me, it's how much of the album am I really enjoying? And this one, you got the vocal tune, which is kind of a throwaway. The acoustic bass solo is too long at 7 minutes. It's gets kind of boring. And then you have Vulcan Princess, which is a really good song, but I can't unknow what I know, and I know I like Vulcan Worlds better. I feel like it's a better usage of that song. You know, it came out better. I had to go and look. This came out later. Vulcan Worlds came out in September, and this came out in December. So I would have thought the other way. Vulcan Worlds sounds more developed, and this sounds kind of like he was just getting it, but it went the other way. So maybe he was just going for a punchier version. I don't know. It's still a great song, but when I hear it, I want the other version. But Lopsy Lou is my favorite song. That's a great riff. Power and Life Suite, I agree with Chris. They're good tunes, but they're a little underdeveloped. I do like Connor's lead playing on those, especially Life Suite. It's really cutting in that tune, but it's good album, but I don't think it's elevated like I think the other 3 are, at least to some degree. So that's why I had it at 4. Eric?
Vulcan Worlds too, that had chicoria. I mean,
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
helps.
it's a more elaborate arrangement. There's more parts. There's just more to it.
Yeah.
So say I'm going Stanley at 3. One of the two Ken Scott productions that we're talking about tonight, which big fan of Ken Scott. You guys said it all. I think Chris, kind of what you mentioned with the riffing, it does seem to be the basis for those. And when you're talking about a 6-7 minute song that sometimes doesn't have a lot of variation to it, you get the soloing over the top. But Power is kind of the one that sticks to me when you hear it. Like, I like the riff, but I'd like a little more variation. Vulcan Princess, I really dug. You mentioned the alembic bass. That stamp is throughout this. His bass just snaps. I mean, there's just it's a great sound. For the Life Suite, the last one, Connors really gets to rip. So I think that's part 4. I think there's 4 parts to that, or that I love, that closing part. The other 3 are okay. I think Hammer has a nice solo in the second one. But I like, there's a funkiness to this. I mean, Loops Lou definitely has a nice funk groove to it. I just think kind of what you said, maybe a little underdeveloped, and maybe counting on the soloing more than to carry it more than the songs. Not that I'm sure they were thinking that way. And I think, like George said, that Spanish phases for string and bass, that's just way too long. That could have been about 2 minutes, and I think it goes 6 or 7. That's just too long. I mean, maybe as a bass aficionado, that's something that they get into, but that one for me is a skipper. So, but I like when they get into that groove, and I think Power is that one that really kind of hammers that riff and groove, and they get into it. It's fantastic, but again, just would be a little too long and could have used a little more development in those to make them a little more interesting. But great stuff. I mean, I really enjoyed listening to it. I probably need to listen to some more Bill Connors, but I really liked what I heard of him. And when you see those names, you got Stanley Clarke, Tony Williams, Jan Hammer, and Bill Connors, maybe your expectation gets a little too high. So still a good record, Stanley Clarke at number 3.
Yeah, the Bill Connors solo in Life Suite Part 4, that's his best work.
Yeah, and you're like, now, here it comes. But
Yeah.
I've listened to the whole record. But yeah, that's a terrific solo.
Chris, where you headed?
For number 3,
3.
I got this one. Larry Coryell. Larry Coryell, very prolific guitarist. God, he has got so many albums out, and he has guested on so many albums. You go on Wikipedia, there's dozens and dozens of albums, all in different genres: acoustic, electric, straight ahead jazz, fusion, avant-garde. He's doing it all. He really is. I just wanted to show you this album from 1964, Chico Hamilton. This is Larry Coryell's first, I think it's his first album. And he's playing jazz rock on this. Jazz rock style guitar in 1964. So he's been at this a while. And he also had a psychedelic band in the late 60s called the Free Spirits, where he's playing like psychedelic rock. He's like done so much. So when he came to this album with 11th House, obviously he heard Mahavishnu and Return to Forever, and he's trying to get on the fusion train and put together his own version of a fusion band. And it's a good album. It's just it doesn't sound to me super inspired. Randy Brecker's on it. He adds a lot to the album. He kind of gives it some edge. A lot of the tunes are funky and almost sound like they could belong in Barney Miller or Beretta 70s TV show. Not that that's bad. It's a little lighter. 1974 was an interesting year for fusion because it was when the experimental part of the genre in the late 60s and early 70s kind of to go into this funk mainstreamy direction, a little more commercial, a little slicker. And that's what a lot of this album sounds like to me. Larry's a great guitar player. Never was one of my favorites. He's a little heavy-handed, a little, I'm not gonna say sloppy, but not as smooth as as far as guitarist goes. I like just a smoother player. So he's a little choppy. But it's a cool album. It's definitely representative of 1974. It's funky, a lot of variations, a lot of, some funk stuff. There's a couple tracks that remind me of McLaughlin with these picking chord patterns, and a little bit of the early 70s sound, but mostly more of a funky, fusion-y sound. Good album. I heard this album long time ago, like back in the 80s when I was in Boston. But I don't own it, and I got the opportunity to listen to it about 5 times, and I do like it. It's just doesn't have enough teeth. So that's it's good production though. It's a good sounding record. That's my 3. Larry.
Pete?
I'm gonna go with Billy Cobham, Total Eclipse. His 3rd solo album. Great lineup, as most of these are. Got the Brecker brothers, you got John Abercrombie and others. I mean, right there, it says a lot. I think Abercrombie just smokes on this album. It's like I've got a lot of albums with him on it, and sometimes he's got like more of like a sedate, laid back style, but man, like Cobham just lets him rip on this thing. Solarization is just awesome. Then you got Billy underneath just going absolutely berserk. Nice horns on that too. Having the Brecker brothers around was also a really, really great thing. Bandits is really good. I just wish that was a little bit longer. This guy, Alex Blake, who I'm not really familiar with, he's really good on bass on this album. Really, really good player. Moon Germs is pretty good. It's kind of like big band feel. I like that. Of course, you got a song called Sea of Tranquility, which is cool. It's kind of laid back and spacey, but I like it. Billy's playing some good stuff on there. And then you got Last Frontier, which, it's a lengthy drum solo on a studio album. I love Billy. He's an amazing player. I don't really think you need to do that. But he was kind of notorious for that. So, but yeah, his drumming is all over this album. I like Abercrombie's playing. I like the Brecker brothers. There's really nothing on here I don't like. I just think there's a couple tracks that are not quite up to snuff with some of the rest of the album. But and definitely ditch the drum solo. We love you, Billy, but your playing is amazing enough on all the regular band tunes. Give us another full song. But yeah, it's my number 3. Definitely, as far as Cobham solo albums, I think it's like upper echelon Cobham though. Really, really good.
Okay. My number 3 is Tilt. This one I take as one whole piece. They're doing callbacks on some of the riffing, so that kind of pulls me into that. And some of the transitions are near seamless. I mean, I wonder if they track index these just by label pressure or something, because to me it sounds like a one long epic, or at least 2 or 3 long epics. I agree with Eric that closer, I'm sure it was Avant-Garde or something back in the 74 with the weird keyboard patch, but I'm listening to it thinking, I know Pete will get this reference. This is the Riot Fired on Under of Fusion. The closer that makes no sense, that you're like, what is this? But the rest of it is all good, although I will echo, let the guitar player go off, man. The guy's good when he plays.
Yeah.
But he's doing
100%.
next to nothing. And I'll echo on the vocals too. He's good. I like him, like like a lot of the Pasta Prog guys. He's a good singer, but I just don't know that he's needed. I mean, like what's Lewis always say? If you're going to add vocals, have a reason. There's really no reason. I mean, they work fine without him, and I don't think they add that much. But maybe there's a commercial angle to his participation. I'm not sure, but really, it's just based on the riff writing. It's a classic record. I mean, it's small gripes. It's really good record, but I just like the other 2 better. So it's my number 3. Eric?
Going with Billy Cobham at number 2. I really like this. It always impresses me when a drummer, not that I have a bias, but when a drummer is listed as a composer, I mean, it's pretty amazing that he could put something like this together as a drummer. I don't know what else he knows musically in terms of instrumentation, but the only thing with this record is I feel like some of the songs take a little while to heat up, but when they heat up, they rip. I mean, I really like the horns on the opener. The opener can at times kind of sound like Chris, you were mentioning TV shows for Larry Coryell. I hear like soundtrack music, almost like a James Bond thing or something. I mean, that solarizations, it backs off a bit and then it picks up. Same thing that you mentioned, Pete. Abercrombie, I think, is pretty impressive on this record when he has his time, and Cobham seems to be able to, he's sharing the spotlight. There's horns on this, like you mentioned, with the Brecker brothers are playing on it. A couple things get a little bit airy, but I think they always kind of come to the rescue and bring things back up. That Bandits, like you said, Pete, is a really cool jam, but much too short. The Sea of Tranquility is another one. It takes a little while, but it kind of comes into its own. But I really like this, and it, like I said, it impresses me that it's a drummer that puts this together musically. Obviously got some great players to play with him, but compositionally, I really like a lot of this. Maybe a little more edge and a little less pulling back in spots, but not much to complain about, I think. And then, kind of like you said, at least we're talking about the last track. So being that the drum solo thing comes in last, you can kind of just end the record a little early, and that's okay with me. So, but that's my number 2, Billy Cobham.
What about you, Chris?
Yeah, Billy Cobham. This is this Cobham album I didn't hear until later, like the 80s. I in the 70s, everyone listened to Spectrum. That was the album. All the drummers listened to it, and all the guitarists did for Tommy Bolin. Tommy Bolin just shreds on that album. And then I heard Crosswinds, which is really good, but that was more jazzy. There wasn't guitar on that, I don't believe. There's a lot of winds and breaths. So this one I didn't hear until I bought this box like 15 years ago. It was like $20. There's 8 CDs in this. It's incredible.
Can't beat that.
No. So this album kind of is like, it's like a better version of the Larry Coryell 11th House album. You got the Brecker brothers on it. Great solos by them. There's a lot of variation. Some funky stuff. Again, John Abercrombie, sounds like they gave him a phase shifter and a fuzz box and put him in the, said go berserk, turn the lights off, give him a hit of acid, just go crazy. It's just like, sounds like McLaughlin kind of on there. His later stuff, I love John Abercrombie, especially his later stuff, his ECM quartet stuff is, he kind of clean. He was the fusion guy in the early 70s. He was on a lot of records. Then he kind of went into more of a straight ahead jazz direction. So yeah, I mean, it sounds good. Ken Scott production. The drums sound awesome. Breckers sound good. It's just not as good for me as Crosswinds or Spectrum. It's each album that he made in the 70s got a little a little weakened for me. But still great players. I mean, come on. And also Sea of Tranquility is my favorite track on it. There's a 6/8 drum groove that goes through that. Billy's Tommy gun rolls. This is awesome.
All right.
All right.
Pete, what do you got at 2?
So, I mean, 1 and 2 are hard. I've had all 4 of these albums for a long time, but like my top 2 I've had the longest. And it was kind of tough choosing between the 2 of them. But I ultimately decided to go with Larry Coryell in the 11th House, introducing the 11th House. I really like this. I mean, it's a debut album. I think it's really good. It's it's more of a jamming album though, right? The more you listen to it, the more it's like, there's not a ton of like concrete compositions on here, but I mean, the synergy between the players is just really, really good. You got Coryell, you got Randy Brecker, you got Alphonse Mouzon, who I love. He's great. Mike Mandel is great. Danny Trifon. I mean, it's a really, really good lineup. Bird Fingers is amazing. The opener. I love Mandel's electric piano throughout the whole album. I think it's really, I mean, I love that sound anyway, right? It's just so indicative of the time. Coryell's a weird cat because he plays these kind of like loopy zigzag leads, and his tone is like really quacky. You ever notice that? Like on most of his, he's got this weird tone. I never really loved this tone. I like this playing. I agree with Chris. He's a little sloppy, I guess, or a little unconventional, but he still impresses me. I really like him. Funky Waltz is great. A lot of wah-wah on this album too, which is kind of cool. Lo Tita reminds me of like a Mahavishnu song, but it's got trumpet on it, which is different. Atom Smasher is great. Yeah, I don't know. Is there CCO, or however the hell you say it, Ism, is there CCO, whatever. That's a real blazer. There's a couple tracks on here that are kind of throwaways, a lot of tracks on here, a couple little short ones that aren't great. But for the most part, I really still enjoy this album. I've always really liked it. I think a couple of the albums that come after this in their catalog are a little tighter, perhaps. But I still think this one is really good and a really good debut. So yeah, it's my number 2. I dig it a lot. It's good stuff.
And number 2 as well. Yeah, I would say a lot of the same things. It's a really good debut. Bird Fingers is a great opener, but maybe after that it gets a little amalgamous. I think they're good riff writers, but they're not much for song development. They put the head out there and they jam basically. I mean, there's not much beyond that. But they're all solid jams. They're good riff writers. Other than again, when we're talking about the Cobham drum solo, I don't need the guitar solo either. The unaccompanied guitar solo. You can keep that.
Attitude, a solo. It's like whatever.
The rest of it, I enjoy all the songs. Brecker's probably the most exciting individual player on here. Brecker or Coryell, I don't know. They're both good. I judged it without. I've got the label. It's got the edition with 3 bonus tracks. I judged it without those, but it goes up in my mind with the bonus tracks. I don't know what that says about the album, but 2 of the 3 bonus tracks, Cover Girl, which is a Mouzon tune, and an early version of Rocks from the Brecker Brothers. Those are more individually spectacular than pretty much the whole track listing. So it's kind of a weird thing. But yeah, it's a good album, consistent. I enjoy it, but it's just my number 1. I feel has higher highs than this one does. So my number 2. Tell us about your 1, Eric.
All right, so I'll have a couple questions then. I like this. I dug it. I dug Coryell. The trumpet, which I can't say I've listened to a lot of trumpet stuff, killed me. I mean, Brecker is fantastic. That Bad Fingers opening. Pete, you mentioned the keyboard player. I wanted to make sure I mentioned that, Mike Mandel. Like you said, that Rhodes electric piano, whatever he's using, it kind of typifies that sound of the 70s, but I thought this stuff worked. Chris, Coryell, is it the envelope filter? Is he using a wah? I mean, that gets a little annoying, maybe tone-wise, like mix it up a little bit. But I felt when I was listening to this, I really enjoyed the clean tone, which isn't always the case. I mean, I love the saturation. I love the distortion. I was surprised at how much I really enjoyed his clean tone. I thought the trumpet just really cut through when there were the trade-offs that were going back and forth. Yin, the trumpet was killer in that. Absolutely. And it's a great guitar jam and the keys as well. That band is firing on all cylinders under the solos. So I don't know if it was maybe just a different thing for me. And as I was listening to Coryell, I kind of get what you're saying, because a lot of those lines are it's almost like he's doing the arpeggios and everything else. He gets a little choppy, but it worked for me. I liked him. And I thought some of those, like Bad Fingers, especially Funky Waltz, once those lines get on my head, they stuck with me. So I don't know. I really enjoyed it. There's a couple things that are maybe a little too mellow, and I ragged on the drum solos and everything else. So I'll say I like a little guitar solo, but I can see where that somebody might be like, yeah, let's get to the tunes. But I think this surprised me a little bit when I saw trumpet. I was like, but it works. It's a great combo with these two. I thought Coryell and Brecker playing off each other were just fantastic. So that's my number one.
I think the way I think of the Coryell thing that we've all talked about is if you watch that Super Guitar Trio video, it's on YouTube with him, Borelli Lagrange, and Demiola. He's really working hard for everything to keep up with those guys. Literally, his body's shaking, and it's still not as clean as them, and it feels like he's going off the rails any minute. That's his whole vibe. Like
Well,
the difference between him.
This might be it really won't add to the conversation, but I've said before, my uncle worked for Ovation Guitars for years, and he worked with Larry Coryell a few times. And all I remember him saying, I had no idea who Larry Coryell is, and he gave me a couple CDs of his, and he's like, you know, you might like him. He's a guitar player. And I remember asking him a couple of things. He just said, he's a weird guy. And that's all he said to me. So I don't know, but I know they worked with him. I don't know if he had a model with Ovation but he used Ovation guitars for years. And I guess I didn't know too that he was Demiola originally, or replaced him. It was originally him with Paco and
McLaughlin?
yeah.
And John,
Is
that
that
was
true?
after. That was after. I saw that
after?
trio. I saw
Okay.
that I saw the Coryell Langreen Demiola trio, and that was around 81, 82. It was after the Friday Night in San Francisco album.
Oh, okay.
Now,
I thought,
he's talking about with Paco and John.
yeah.
Coryell was with them before Al. There's a video from
Oh, he got booted for Al?
They
yeah.
said whatever. I guess he was having issues at the time, so they replaced him with Demiola.
Al was Al was good in that trio.
Yeah, he's more of a fit.
Yeah, he's more of a because he's got the Spanish thing. Coryell was more of a jazz bluesy style.
Well, that too. He seemed like with this record. Would you agree that the other guys rock a little more? He kind of stayed more on the jazz side, I think, with this one. Maybe not as much of a rock influence on 11th House as I'm hearing on the other.
Well,
three.
that's as rock as Larry's going to get.
Okay.
Here at 11th House that I have heard. Yeah, I mean, he's got gain on the guitar. He's bending strings. He's doing some Hendrix licks. He's throwing everything in there.
Yeah.
He's got a solo album. I forget what it's called. That came out a couple of years before this one. That's total like psychedelic jazz. So you can totally see what Chris is talking about. That's kind of where he came from.
Okay.
He's not really much of a rock guy. It's pretty cool though. But he's using the wah-wah and doing all this wacky shit. You know, it's pretty cool.
Well, yeah, when he was in the Free Spirits, I was telling you, the psychedelic band, you wouldn't even know it's him. He's playing like he's trying to sound like Jimi Hendrix. It's an interesting. He tried a lot of different things, but I don't think he had the picking chops for that trio stuff to keep that going for 90 minutes. That's just, that's really strenuous music.
Well, tell us about your number one, Chris.
Yeah. Well, not the popular one tonight, but not that one. This one. So why did I like this? Because I like the songs. This is one of those albums that's two prog for fusion, two fusion for prog. It's very through composed, like George said. It's like one big piece, and they're good melodies. And the arrangements are I mean, the instrumentation, there's vibraphone, acoustic guitar, electric guitar, bass drums, mellotrons, ARP synths, vibraphone, clarinet, and violin. So you have all this stuff going on to keep the songs interest, and they never seem to get in the way of each other. And it has this Mediterranean folk influence, this fusion influence, but they also sound like early PFM to me, which is that Mediterranean Italian thing where the vocals come in. PFM style vocals, and there's not a lot of vocals. That doesn't bother me. This album also reminds me of, you guys know the album Maxophone,
Hmm.
that one-shot album. That's
Yeah.
kind of the same kind of vibe as this. It's
Similar.
two prog for fusion, two fusion for prog, little classical, big instrumentation, great melodies. A lot went into the arrangements and the songwriting, and that's why I like it. I just like the songs. It's not a lot of jamming like the other albums are more jamming. These are more compositions. Drummer, too busy. Yeah, he's too busy. He's filling every nook and cranny with fills. I'm like, why are you doing this? I mean, you have a busy solo, a busy violin guitar duel, and underneath it, you've got like, you know, rolls and cymbal smash. It's just like too much going on. But the songs are great. Love the tunes. The last track, the only reason I could think that was put in there is because this album was produced by Aria's guitarist, right? Paolo something. And they were doing all sorts of weird stuff with synths. And they said, you got to try to be experimental. And they just kind of threw that together because they needed another 2 minutes on the album, maybe? I don't know. That wouldn't bother me so much if it was in the middle of the tune. Like kind of like the tune breaks down, it gets weird, and the song, starts up again. But to have it as the last track is just like, it's weird. But still, it's a great record. It holds together for me. Melodies, great melodies. Violin, clarinet, vibraphone. Yeah. So that's my number one. That's the album I would listen to, the most, because I'm a song guy. I like more tunes, and not that the other ones don't have. They're all strong records. There's not a weak record here. No, it's just what I like to listen to would be the Italians for this set.
Pete, let's hear from you.
I guess I'm the outlier here. I love the Stanley Clarke album. Like I said, I've had it for like 40 years, right? It's I love his solo stuff, especially the early stuff. And to me, there's just some bangers on this album that I love so much that it just automatically, I knew this was going to be my number one going in. I mean, I love Vulcan Princess. Lopsy Lou is just absolutely terrific. Love it. I love Power. I love hearing Connors and Hammer wailing around here. Tony Williams going berserk underneath. I mean, side one to me is just absolutely amazing. Just love it. Side two, a little more orchestral, a little more spacey. Yeah, you got the long bass solo, and I get that. That's probably my least favorite here on the album. But man, Life Suite has some intense playing, and I love Connors soloing on it. Excuse me. And I think throughout, I think Stanley's bass playing is just so good. So this to me, yeah, and it's more of like a jammy type album, but I don't care. I love the tunes, and that's the important thing. And I just love the lineup, and I think everybody really shines on here. So that was number one by default. I knew it going in, although the Coryell album gave it a nice run for the money there for a bit. But after I like listened to all these over and over a couple times, I was kind of like, yeah, these two are going to be at the top, but Stanley's got to win this one for me. So.
I knew it was your number one too, and not just
I kind of gave it away last month, didn't I?
Yeah. But I also know you love it. My number one is the Cobham.
The drummer picks the drummer, of course.
Yeah, he's got that pleasantly spastic right hand too, but unlike Furio Chirico, he's got it dialed back when it needs to be dialed back. He's a little more musical than Furio is. But yeah, he's all over this, blazing away on Solarization. That might be my favorite. Yeah, that's my favorite track. I love Lunar Putians. Good funky stuff. This album's pretty damn funky. I like the funk stuff. Total Eclipse. You got a pretty rare occurrence of the great Michael Brecker doing a soprano sax solo. Pretty much the best tenor the last 50 years, but he can rip on soprano too. That solo is incredible. Bandits, like another great riff. Like Pete said, that song needed to be developed. Moon Germs is a good funky tune also. Sea Tranquility, another great epic. Really, the whole album hums along for me until the agreed upon unnecessary unaccompanied drum solo. Although the strings come in at the end for I don't know what reason. It doesn't seem to make any sense to me at all, but yeah, they put it last. Up until that point, I feel like it is a noticeable tick above the rest for me. I listened to this one more than those, and it's my second favorite Cobham after Spectrum. So I was pretty sure it was going to be my number one, but like Pete said, I thought about the Coryell, but nah, this is it.
Well, that album also, it's loose concept, space concept album.
Yeah,
By space, anything space, and so that the last bit was, the ship landing after the
yeah,
drums. That's I don't know. It's all it's all tied to outer space and
it's the
Billy,
70s, man.
huh?
It was a 70s thing.
Yeah, it was a 70s thing. Nothing wrong with that.
Well, the George's pick, anytime we have a 70s theme show, it's always hard to get one past Pete because he knows the 70s so well. But I happen to pick one that Chris tells me I got past him even. A Swedish band. They are called Energy. They are one and done. As you can see, a quartet. What did you think, Eric?
Loved it. I think this falls into your category, Chris. Maybe a little too prog for the fusion guys and a little too fusion for the prog guys. I don't know. Energy's a great name for these guys. I thought they were on fire pretty much throughout. I think I kind of did we always do a ranking the albums. I did a ranking the songs because there's only 5 on this one, but the only thing I don't care for is the title track. I just found it's kind of uneven, boring. Again, vocals not necessary, I don't think here. Track 3 up to 7, that is funky, killer bass, great guitar. But I think, this is a band that rocks. You're not going to get put to sleep by these guys at all. I just, the opener too, Subtle Forces, awesome. Electric piano, same thing, kind of a driving bass and drums. The guitar really kicks in at the end of that one to ride the song out. And I like the layering. I think there's some organ and electric piano on that opener that really works well. And the closer is another one. Just ripping. And I don't know how you find this stuff, George. Like, have you known this record for a while?
Maybe 5-6 years.
Because I think you sent me so I could listen to it. I got files from you, but even on YouTube, I think there was maybe a track or two. I don't even think I saw the whole record.
Got to find them all separately. They're not listed.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's super obscure.
Yeah.
Okay. So, but I thought these guys were great, and definitely, like I said, a lot of energy, a lot of rock energy from these guys when they get going. But I thought it was terrific.
What'd you think, Chris?
To be honest, I didn't spend a lot of time with it. I listened to them at 3 times. It's good play. It sounds like rock guys trying to go fusion. Sounds like a rock band says, let's go try to get jazzy. And yeah, it's good players. Mahavishnu era, Return to Forever obviously are their 2 biggest influences. Actually, George, I did have this in iTunes. I didn't even know. It was buried in there. I don't know how it got in there, but I was downloading a lot of music 10, 20 years ago. But yeah. Yeah, so it's a good album. It's for the curious. Check it out. I can't go into more detail because like track by track, I'm not that familiar with it. But overall, the sound of it is, guitar, keyboards, bass, drums, and there's one track with the chick singing. I actually kind of like that. It's kind of, I don't know, Brian Auger kind of ish. Yeah.
What was your take, Pete?
I totally dug it. I got done listening to this. I'm like, damn, I would love to own this. Of course, you can't find a copy of this anywhere out there. It's just like, so obscure. But yeah, this is totally right in my wheelhouse. And this guitar player, Amedeo Nicoletti, guy's awesome. And I agree with Chris. I think some of these guys are rock guys and just decided to do a fusion album. But that's okay by me. I think it's like Porta Marina, totally smokes. Subtle Forces, love that. You know, the one weird tune is you got that Metamorphosis Impressions piece, Rich, like the long piece. You got this really cool piano and then like a little bit of vocals, and then all of a sudden this just like weird, like kind of groovy weather report thing, like in the second half of the song. And then the guitar player comes in and just totally rips it up. Really, really good. Seven is awesome. I love the Rhodes on the song, John. I really like this a lot. I think this is really serious stuff, and like I said, I would love to own this somehow someday. But yeah, good luck with that. Anyway, good choice, George. I liked it.
Yeah, I think whoever recommended it to me showed me that song John first, and I, probably as I check this out, this sounds like my Hibisnik thing, and it certainly does. I mean,
Yeah.
completely. And I love that song, and I love the kickoff track, Subtle Forces. That's really good. And Up to Seven too, really good. I don't care for the vocal tune, and this time I don't care for the vocalist. She's a little I don't know, not my flavor, but yeah, I thought, for a one and done, nobody band, I thought this was a good one.
Yeah, the vocalist reminded me of Julia Tippett's, what she did with Brian Auger, kind of hippie, spacey,
Yeah,
cosmic,
yeah.
fusion,
Cool.
jazzy, new age, 70s. I like that whole thing.
A little bit like the broad from the Bruford album, Peacock.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like I never used to like that kind of stuff. Like Gail Moran with Chick Corea. I used to hate her.
Oh,
Thought she
yeah.
ruined the albums. Then when I was like, yeah, it's a pretty good. I listen to it now. It doesn't bother me so much. It's an age thing.
There needs to be no singing on any Return to Forever album. I don't care if it's acoustic or electric. Ditch it. No.
Well, we have to live with them.
Yeah.
Did any of these guys land anywhere else?
Not to my knowledge.
No? Okay.
I mean, there
No.
wasn't much of a Swedish fusion scene going on at the time, so it's like you have to wonder if these guys like what they went on to do afterwards. But it's like so long ago. Who knows?
They're really competent, really good. I mean,
Good players.
yeah. I
Cool.
guess there are probably a lot of albums like that, that one shots around that
Yeah.
era to cash in on the trend that
I mean,
lasted about
we
2
know of a
years.
lot.
Hmm?
We know of a lot. Just think all the ones that we don't know about. I mean, I'm sure they're out there.
Yeah,
Sure.
for sure.
That were never released digitally.
Yeah.
Or yeah.
This is just a vinyl.
Hmm.
I'm sure there's tons of them like this and Flying Island and Cornet and et cetera, et cetera.
Flying Island, that's from my hometown.
Yeah. Vanguard band.
Faith Vaioli, her family owned a music store in town. She played violin.
So, of course, for everybody watching, you get to play along too. So, rank these four as you like them. If you're one of many, maybe some of these are new to you, and go check them out. Report back how you would rank them down below. And I want to share a note because I know he's watching. Funny little story. So, I know Gary Joyce does his homework really, really carefully. So, earlier this week, I was out re-listening to some of the energy tracks and I see one of the videos from one of the songs, and I'm looking to see if anybody commented on this because God only knows how long this video has been on YouTube. And there's only one comment on the video, and it's from Gary saying, "George from Sea of Tranquility sent me here to listen to this smoking song and whatever." And I commented, I'm like, "Nice to see you doing your homework," something like that, whatever. And then of course Gary mentioned it on one of the videos this week in the chat. So it's so weird that small world, right? But it just goes to show you how obscure this band is. Not like you got like millions of videos out there with these songs on there. So, but very cool. George, you want to give everybody a little preview of what's coming up next month?
Next month, yeah, we're kind of a viewer's request show. We are going back to Land of the Rising Sun, Japan show, which I'm sure does not disappoint Eric.
Not at all.
People liked the first one we did, so we're going to do another episode focusing on bands from Japan. And I'll have a guy from my forum Sven Levine, he knows the Japanese scene like I do. I mean, he's really into it. So he's supposed to be on the first one. We had an issue, so we're gonna bring him back for this.
Cool. Looking forward to it. Always good to listen to bands from Japan. So it never disappoint.
No.
Cool. And as always, we want to thank Chris for joining us once again. I'm sure we'll be seeing him on a future episode because he's always a pleasure to have you, Chris.
Thanks, Pete.
When he's here on this fun little show we do here every month. So
We've seen some posts of Helmet and Nats in the studio, so that
Yeah,
could bear.
we have a new song, one song. It's a good one though.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
coming out in the next couple of weeks on Bandcamp.
Nice.
So Chris, make sure to get us the link and we'll post it down in the comments below so people can go check it out.
Okay, cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. This February edition of 4Fusion Friday. Tune in just a month as we kick off March with another episode of Fun Fusion from the land of the rising sun. Till then, visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube all together, all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already and click on that notification bell so you get alerted of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit the like button before you leave. Also, down below, we get the links to our Ko-Fi page for channel donations, our merch page, and our Cameo page. And we'll get the link to the new song from Helmet and Nats as well. Till next time, for Chris Fox, George Lamie, and Eric Porter, I am Pete Pardo. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. See you real soon. Bye-bye.